All right, good morning. It's Friday, February 20th, 10:35 a.m. This is the Dryden Public Broadband Committee meeting. This is the second meeting of the month of February. First meeting was our look back at January. This meeting is the other topics conversations meeting. We've been focusing on different types of topics the last few months. This one is on the 2026 Dryden Fiber budget. Next month will be on MDUs, and then in April we'll talk about marketing. Unless the Public Broadband Committee, this is your committee, unless you want to move those around and talk about other things. I'm going to share my screen so we can look at the agenda for today before we dive into the presentation itself. All right. So we'll do introductions. We have meeting minutes to approve from June, July, and August of last year. There's the conversation about the support of A10212, which is an assembly bill, New York State. We can do a brief MIP update and then hit the financial overview, and then other construction items going on. So as we start each of these meetings, would someone like to volunteer to recite the mission and share what the mission experience has been for you?
So, our mission is to provide reliable, affordable, high-speed, fiber-based internet access. We offer state-of-the-art technology and unmatched customer. Um, so my name is Joel Cisney. I'm one of the early adopters of Dryden Broadband and hopped on shortly thereafter. The one power outage in recent memory by now was handled pretty well in all accounts. I had a nice conversation recently with somebody who shared that well, they've got a nice home networking setup that does state monitoring. And from switching from Spectrum to Dryden Fiber, the periodic drops from Spectrum, more or less auto rebooting their services once every 2 to 8 hours, went to nothing. And his uptime is now in the 4 or 5 digits, which is lovely. So go Dryden Fiber.
Awesome. That's good. Uh, we have a new subscriber who lives on Route 366 Dryden Road in that section between Varna and Route 13. And they must be on some community listserv because they got installed this week, and then like four of their neighbors installed within a couple of days. And then I saw a post online, and half the people who responded are Dryden Fiber customers, like in that little neighborhood already. So um, it's nice when it's available to people. Awesome. Hold on, Dan and Arthur and everyone else who are waiting on. Um, but it's cool to see that without us doing any direct marketing to these people, they're just talking to their neighbors and they're talking about the uptime. And as Joel just said, I think our best marketing is the customer service of Spectrum. They are making it really easy for people to jump ship repeatedly. So thanks, Joel. All right, meeting minutes. A few weeks ago, Cassie and I forwarded you meeting minutes from June 6th and 20, July 11 and 25, and August 8th and 22nd. Has everyone had a chance to review those? Do you want to move these minutes as one single, uh, all six of them at once, or any individual feedback?
I think we can do all six at once, Dave.
All right.
I agree.
So I'll put a motion to approve the June 6th, the 20th, July 11th, 25th, August 8th, and 22nd up to be approved.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Graham and Tony. Any discussion?
No, it's hard. I'm like looking at these going, do I remember what happened on June 6th?
It was a while ago.
It was a while ago.
It is with everything that we're doing.
Yeah.
In this case, not the highest priority of tasks that
Yeah.
Cassie has on her tremendous plate of things to do to help us out.
That's fun.
It's good to have them in the record. Someday we'll look back and have a better understanding of what's going on, and the detail better in there are pretty solid. All right. I guess we'll take a vote for the Public Broadband Committee members. All in favor of Graham's resolution Motion.
Aye.
Aye.
All right. That's all five of you, so it's unanimous for the attendees. All right, the next item, Dryden support for A10212. Currently, local law limits bonds for fiber optic infrastructure to be 10 years, which is not aligned with the lifespan of the infrastructure we're putting out in place. In doing a bunch of research over the last few months, the lifespan literally published by the manufacturers is in the 30 to 40 years, sometimes even greater than that. In addition, for us to financially work the construction timeline into flipping over to the customers coming online and using um, their monthly bills, the revenue from the monthly bills to pay for both the monthly bills, the installations, and then the long-term construction costs. 10 years is not enough time for us to do this in any kind of feasible way, especially because this bond package does not start when the project finishes, when we build the last mile or activate the last house with access to the service. It started a couple of years ago, so the 10-year term is already running. It's
Hey,
possible.
Rod, this is Mark
Hey, Mark,
checking
you're
in.
not
I
muted,
see we got
but I'm in charge. I can mute him. Um, so uh, we looked at what the infrastructure looks like for other bonds for uh, roads, bridges, culverts, and 30 years matches up with the lifespan of the material. So we've asked our state assembly person to bring this to Albany to pass to extend the bond period from 10 years to 30 years. We being, I drafted it, and then Dan has uh, shepherded this up to the assembly and hopefully over to the state to the Senate. Um, They have then in return asked for a letter of support from the town. So not only can we ask for this, but we also have to have a letter of support. The town board authorized the supervisor to send a letter last night at the town board meeting. And I guess for this, since Dan is here, what's the timing like for this request for support? And do we have time for additional support?
Yeah, so there's plenty of time for this. Hopefully it will be included in the state budget. And so we need to build support between now and June
No.
for the bill. And it will, what letter of support do is they go into to a bill folder. It's kind of an electronic folder that the legislature maintains. So members can look through that and see where the support is.
Oh, well, that's good. That answers the question about how fast we should turn this letter around that Cassie and I were thinking about from last night's resolution. I think ideally we have one from the town of Dryden. We have one from the Public Broadband Committee, which operates separately from the town board. One from town of Caroline, although they won't be using bonds to the degree that we are. They will have some bonds to cover some of the operational costs up front as they build out. And then I can go to the MIP recipients, the other 16 recipients of the first round of MIP. A lot of those projects are completely funded by the state, but some of them will have bonds too. So I think this might be of interest to them. And
And my understanding, Dave, the way it was, I actually liked how it was written. It was written for the solid infrastructure, not for the switches and things like that that have a shorter lifespan. It seemed to be that that's how it's written, and that's how we'll use it. So I thought it was pretty well written that way. So at least that was my understanding of it when I read it. So
yeah, I guess Amanda might be able to say it, but I don't think we differentiate every dollar from the bond if it was for long-term infrastructure that is in the 30 to 40 to 50 years versus um, items that are going to be in the POPs. We just know that the cost of the material and the labor to do the work for the build out aerial stranded fiber underground is a majority of the cost. We could say that the electronics are part of the operating budget, which is paid for by the subscriptions, shorter term. As they come in, we pay for those, and the long-term expense of the project, the construction of it, is paid for by the bonds. It's not quite like that, but more or less, we pick that average of 30 years based on the items that are in each of these buckets.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the bill is actually pretty short. It's
It's surprising. Yes.
Nice and succinct.
it's very, very succinct. It basically just says uh for acquisition, construction, or replacement of broadband and related telecommunications infrastructure pursuant to section 90 of the general municipal law to 30 years. That's really all it says.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically what our bond counsel attorney sent us as a draft.
Yeah.
Then we modified slightly and found a bunch of background information, a lot from other industries or other jurisdictions, but also industry material providers and the companies that make the hardware that we're talking about bonding. Um, and then sent it to Dan, and the assembly formatted into this format. So it's there's not a lot in there. It's surprising how little, but how
Yeah.
impactful it will be for us. Um,
Yeah, there's a group in the Senate and in the House, I mean the Assembly as well, that support municipal broadband, and we're fortunate because of that. Um, we have a great state senator here, but it turns out that there's another state senator who ushers through municipal broadband bills, and that's Senator Rachel May, and she'll be introducing it in the state Senate.
that's
And
excellent.
they kind of covet this stuff, and they identify a part of their careers with certain topics. Members of the Senate, and Senator May was excited to work on this, and um, just a simple wording change, turning 10 into 30. That's all we're asking for. Keep it simple and move it quickly. I think we got a good shot at this.
That's great. I mean, it's a transformational budget and finance wise over the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years as we build out and have the ability to use the infrastructure costs to be of value. Um, so I would
I
go ahead, Graham.
And they're letting them depreciate it. I think it was 25 years for fiber. Now they're moving it up to 35 years. Or at least there's that definitely within the, when you look at depreciating that assets. So it's right in line. So
So I would invite a member of the Public Broadband Committee to draft a letter. You can use the template format that the town board authorized for Jason to sign. You can come up with your own. Um, you have Tony found a copy of the bill of A10212 to use that. You can use the other material that I put together to send to the assembly. Does anyone want to volunteer to do this? It's not like I have to do it today based on Dan's timeline, but it'd be great to have it submitted by the end of March. That way, as they're taking this up in the Assembly and the Senate, they have April, May, and June before the vote to look at it.
I can take a stab at it if you want.
Awesome. Thanks, Tom.
So what we should do is write it, share it with this group, and then maybe at our next meeting vote on it. Is that what you're thinking?
That'd be great.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, this group meets again in 2 weeks on March 6th.
So, Dan, just out of curiosity, what does it mean when it says referred to local governments? So the bill's been referred. Does that mean, is that what you're talking about? Is it so the local governments got notified of this bill and they're been asked for feedback? Is that what it means?
Yeah, actually, so now that we have a bill number, you can plug it into New York State. Well, I'll put the link in the chat, but you can plug it in and track where it is. So right now it's in the local government committee. So it's been referred to local governments, means it's in that committee for review. It hasn't been introduced in the state Senate yet, but it
Right.
will follow that strategy in the
Yeah.
Senate, where the committees actually have meetings, and they, each week during session, and they go through and they look at the bills that have been put to them, review
Yep.
them, offer comments, and then vote them up. And maybe I'll have to go to another committee. Uh, but it's kind of like a sequential process until it gets to the floor. Oh, very good. You got
Yep.
that.
And individuals through this site can also, like, if you create a login, um, you can actually say you support a bill or not,
Wow.
and it will uh it will give you a little box where you can type like in my case, it says it's going to go to Lee Webb, right? And you can put a little private note in there, whatever, say, I support this bill, whatever. Um, so yeah, I've used this a few times to express support for specific bills within the New York State. But
This is
Yeah,
great. I have never seen this. This is
yeah,
like
I
perfect.
know.
you can download the yeah, everything's right there. You can see where it is and all that. Yeah, yeah,
This isn't a year ago we had a bill and it wasn't even like this.
yeah,
Uh, so this is a nice upgrade to
yeah, yeah,
good job, New York.
yeah.
This
So
is
I
way
did meet with Leah Webb about this, and she was excited to introduce it, but protocol meant that it really needed to go to Rachel May. And so it's not that
Right,
Leah doesn't want to introduce it, it just needs to go through the senator who has really carved out this
right,
topic.
right.
Are they in a rural broadband area? Senator May.
Say that again.
Do you know if Senator May is in a rural broadband area of the
Oh
state?
yeah, she's outside of Syracuse. She doesn't have the city, but she has like parts of Madison County and parts of Onondaga. And she's carried our other legislation that we've
Oh, great.
done.
That's wonderful. So there it is from Dan, referred to local governments,
Hmm.
which is now we know it's a committee.
Yeah, that's why I was just so I just thought that was the interesting action. So that's what we're talking about responding to, I guess, right? Is the fact that it was referred to local governments.
Cool. That's good. Good job, Dan. Um, Sweet. So Tony, thanks for taking this up, and we'll check back in 2 weeks at the March
So
meeting.
you were so you're gonna send me a sample letter from the lawyer? Is that what you're gonna do? Or
I'll send you the letter that just got approved last night that
yep,
Jason's going to sign on behalf of the town.
okay,
Uh,
yep.
I don't, I
That'd
don't
be
know.
helpful just to have something.
This could be another question for Dan. Is do the letters from Caroline Dryden and the Dryden Public Broadband Committee have to be very different from each other?
No,
Personal?
no, I think the shorter the better. I'm a big fan of a three paragraph letter, the intro, the topic, and then the thank you. Just keep it real short.
There's your assignment, Tony. Awesome. All right, good. All right. MIP update. As we mentioned a few weeks ago, reimbursement was sent in on January 30th for about 1.8 million. Matt and Amanda are working closely with New York State to answer all their questions, both on the finance side and the engineering side. Make sure that everything we submitted to them clears through. I think last night the town board had said I think we would be done with the back and forth part of that by the end of the month. And Amanda might know more specifically. We have 8 more days. We're waiting on a few things from engineering. We're waiting on feedback from their people on their response and our feedback. It's just back and forth refining as we're the first time going through this. My estimate is if we had this completed and accepted by March 1st, we probably would get paid in around 30 to 45 days. And that's mostly because of the amount of work that we started on this reimbursement going back to last fall. Even before the GDA was signed in December, we started submitting material for them to review the pencil copy. Like, here's what you're doing right in your reimbursement request, even before we sent it. The second, third, and fourth reimbursements have mileage requirements that are substantial. Uh, Matt and Amanda and I are tracking these, but the main part is on mileage. 40, 75%, 100% complete, which we think will hit sometime in the summer or early fall for the second reimbursement. and then later in the fall at the end of the year for the third and fourth reimbursements. That's where we are with MIP. Any questions on MIP funding, reimbursements, project construction? As of today, as of last week, all three of the construction areas, which are Freeville, Greater Dryden, and Caroline, have been awarded. They've all been awarded to Syracuse Utilities. And just the last piece on the contract for Caroline is being processed now. I would say by March 1st, all three of them, the last one being Caroline, will be signed off and ready to go. All
And
right.
can I just ask a question? Where are we with the engineering on the second one? He was not quite finished with those books, but I think the last meeting we had.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago. I don't think that we've given all those to Syracuse Utilities yet.
Yeah. Okay.
Still working through it. It's a huge area. It might make sense to just do partial build areas. Like this area is ready to look at because the entirety of it goes, as you've seen on the map,
Yeah.
from Etna to Bethel Grove to Dryden Lake, Route 13, Ellis Hollow. It's like 3,300 parcels. It's a huge area. So doing a little chunk of it might be a better way than saying, let's wait to get the entire thing done for them to start processing it. And I think some work assignments have already been laid out for Syracuse. We're meeting with them on Mondays each week to keep track of where we are, Dryden Fiber, Vantage on the engineering side, and Syracuse.
Hmm.
Okay, let's go over to the 2026 budget. As it loads up. All right, so I'm going to start with the executive summary of the financial summary, which is to date, Dryden Fiber has made a $14.7 million investment in the platform since inception. That's since 2021. This has delivered over 75 miles of completed fiber, installations to over 515 homes or businesses, construction planning and implementation for the next 150 miles of service, as well as ongoing operations supporting customers since they first came online in November of 2022. So this is like everything: construction, engineering, legal, labor, materials, uh, installation costs, installation labor, marketing, outreach, support, like all in one, everything we've spent so far. And because it combines both construction and ongoing operations and installations, um, it's not just like this is what it costs to build what we have. This is what it costs to build and operate and run what we've done so far through the end of last year, through 12/31/25. In 2025, it was kind of our first full year of having enough customer base to look at monthly expenses, and we showed strong signs of our ability not just to break even on the month-to-month operating expenses, but also shows that the customers will generate enough revenue to both continue to offer free installations, which average a little over $1,000 per install, and over a longer period of time, generate enough revenue to pay down the overall construction costs of the project. We weren't able to say that at the end of 2024. We only had about 200 customers then. We weren't even close to being at the monthly operating break even. But what we've seen in the reports from last year is enough revenues coming in from subscriptions to have money left over to then pay off installations and then over time pay down construction costs. Finally, in 2026, we will increase our ban to cover the construction costs as we go forward. And as a stopgap, while we receive some reimbursement from New York State, we are going to be getting some money back from the state for Dryden from MIP. We also have an initial estimated projections for 2027, 2028, which will show continued growth of the subscriber base, but also payment of the construction bonds. And then this bond legislation we just talked about, I put that ahead of this in the agenda because this will have a big impact on the long-term finances of the project. So our goal today is to look back a little bit at where we spent money through the end of 2025, through the end of last year, and look at the 2026 budget, and then we can have a conversation about what the time looks ahead. Before we jump into the rest of it, any questions on this overview summary? Good. All right, some thumbs up. All right, so 2021 to 2025 construction investments. This is where it was the breakdown of that 14.7 million. Now it says construction investments, but as I said, this is everything we've spent across the entire project to date. So subcontractors, which is construction and splicing, about 4.8 million. The equipment purchases, all the materials, strand, fiber, electronics, handholds, conduit, anchors, as well as some of the equipment for installs, 3.1 million in those hard costs. Installations, home installations to support both the individual home installations as well as MDUs. That goes out to mostly Clarity and Gleeman, who helped with MDU planning, a little bit to Vantage, and then all the drop cables, plume devices, ONUs, and everything else to install to these first 500 customers, but also preparing us. A lot of the equipment we need for future installations, we've already purchased, and that rolls into this $1 million. In addition, the planning we've done on MDUs, mobile home parks, apartment buildings, the engineering time and Clarity time to go in and assess those already rolled in to this $1 million. So it's not just we have 500 customers and we spent $1 million to get there. We have equipment and material and planning to go well beyond this current 500 with this $1 million investment. Professional fees, engineering, legal, going back to 2021 for the first 5 years of the project, about 2.7 million. Permit and pole applications. This includes the electrical make-ready work as well as all the permits, 2.4 million. And then the other items are much smaller, down to single-digit percentages, loan interest, miscellaneous construction expenses, and the personnel for the project. So that's where we spend money, kind of looking at instead of thousands of invoices over 5 years, looking at it in these 8 individual buckets. Before we jump ahead, any questions on what's inside these big buckets?
Just out of curiosity, the permanent pole application's 2.4 million. You said that includes electrical make ready. Is there an idea of like what part of that 2.4 million is like actual permits and applications and what part is like make ready work?
We have all the invoices. Amanda could probably.
I'm just curious. I'm just curious because
it's a mind-boggling number, Tony. The survey costs are pretty extensive between NYSEG and Charter. And we should say the make-ready costs are our share. Obviously, there's a portion of the make-ready costs that our NYSEG pays for.
Right.
That's not in here because that's basically just a reimbursement. Money comes in and from
goes
them.
out, right? Yeah.
So, without really digging
I'm just curious.
Yeah. I've been tracking it since we started applications and kind of, took a deep breath when each one was $20,000 just for the application or survey. So.
Yeah, that's what I was curious about. Is a big chunk of that is the actual like surveys, not actual work, but I shouldn't say not actual work, not actual like they're doing things on the poles. It's
yeah. I would probably say rough estimate, almost $1 million is probably close to what they're doing on the poles, but that's pretty rough.
Right.
So
I'm just curious. Yeah.
And again, it's over 4 years, so we've got all
Right.
of those together.
Yep.
So, Amanda, when you say the permit, is this the ongoing permit cost that we have to pay for rental on each pole included in this or not?
No, it is not included in
No,
this. That's in a
okay.
separate
That's an
line. That's
operation. Yeah,
that's
okay.
a pole rentals
Yeah,
for NYSEG, Frontier, Charter.
yeah.
They're in a different bucket.
Right. Yeah, those aren't considered construction. Right.
Right.
Good. Good. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
This was just to get the privilege of paying those rental fees.
That's right. I mean, in total, the project count that we have from engineering is about 4,980 utility poles across the two towns. So 5,000 poles. Each of those poles has to be assessed, surveyed by someone who has the skills, and usually a team of two people to go and measure it out and see where things are and see things, where the lines are that are existing on that pole for electricity, cable, telephone, where we're going to attach, where there's room for us to go, where there isn't room. And in some cases, not all cases, thankfully, where poles need to be replaced and how they're going to do the work to replace those poles. So like it's easy to say like, well, they didn't do anything, but they did have to survey and know exactly what's going on. And no one has that information. There's not like a Wikipedia for the 5,000 poles that are out there. Like you have to go in person and see what it looks like. I I would say it's probably the biggest surprise to me is how many poles we're replacing that are just have reached the end of their life. Not from, I mean, Sean Scarzelli might know because he's the construction guy on site on the call. Um, Not because we need to make room just for us. It's because the poles were like, you know what, we may as well replace the pole now that we're doing this work. Versus we just need that much more room for Dryden fiber, so then replace the entire pole. There's like a lot of old poles out there. There also are poles out there that have been out there for 50 or 60 years, which is the lifespan of these poles. So we're making this investment in the overall infrastructure that's going to be there for a long time.
And this, because of it's including survey and all that sort of work, it would include a lot of Caroline as well in this?
There is
Or
no
those
Caroline in
bills,
these
or
numbers
these
at all.
bills, okay,
This part is
Yeah.
just us.
Yeah.
just us. So, but would this basically the entirety of Dryden that we've surveyed now? The survey portion, I mean, or is that we haven't been billed for those yet?
I believe we've had most of the surveys because they did do some new pole permit applications this past summer, late summer, early fall. And those are the first bills that come. And so I think we have almost all of those initial starting bills are through. The survey costs are through. Um, I believe so. I'd have to go and really dig into it, but
So we put together this chart, which is the where the money went in percentages. So subcontractors, the physical work of putting this out there, 33% of the cost. Equipment and materials over the 5 years, 20% of the cost. Professional fees, legal and engineering, it probably should leave with engineering since engineering is the bigger piece of the professional service fees. Uh, every time there's an engineer, a Vantage vehicle driving around, or previous to Vantage, a Hunt vehicle driving around, they build us for that, and that all fit into this professional fees category. Um, we require an engineer on site for all construction. So that way, if there's any questions, the construction partner doesn't have to wait for a day or longer for a response. They can ask the person in the field, what does this mean? What do we do in this case? We pay for that. That's all under the professional fees, even though it's happening during construction. The engineering is it's not just, an engineer with a schematic. They are in person, they're looking at poles, they're driving the roads, they're on site for construction, and they're doing a bunch of other things that are part of that professional fee line in the budget. Pole and permit applications, 16%. We talked about that. Investment in installation costs, 7%, and the last few are just under 5%. I think this is a good way to think about it in terms of like where does the dollar go that we're investing in the project, where um, subcontractors, locally Central New York based, but like labor going to pay primarily Syracuse Utilities and Lightspeed who are doing our splicing. That money is staying right here in Central New York, paying people to do the work. Equipment purchases, that's material we're getting from all over the United States. That's investments that are primarily, some of the electronics are coming from overseas, but US based expenses. Pole and permit applications, again, that's a lot of labor for surveys and workers that are based in Central New York from La Bella to the other um, partners doing the electrical make ready work. Danella, HRS, H. Richardson and Son, doing that work um, right here. So a lot of this money is being spent right here in Central New York on the project with materials and labor, all the way down through the professional fees, installations, and other personnel. All right, that's where we are 21 through 25. Any questions before we move to the next section? All right, the next is on operating costs. This is what it costs to run the service by the month. So outside of construction installations, how do we actually provide the service month to month? So we looked at these categories. We totaled up the expense in 2025 for these and the number of customers we had and came up with the annual cost for each of these per customer in 2025. The bottom line shows a loss of $3 per customer per year after all revenue and expenses are taken into effect in 2025, which is
That's better than I would expect,
it's
Dave, at the moment.
unbelievably close to like break even on the per customer cost with only 500 customers. We'll see what that looks like. I think in the next slide or in a future slide. Um, we've gone through a lot of these a lot over the last year, but since this is the annual budget um, review meeting, just quickly, uh, wholesale service is our backhaul provider. We have three providers who we connect to the internet through. Customer service is with NetTegrity. They do all of our support, customer support 24/7, 365, as well as all the scheduling of installations. They're also the quarterback on any incidences and outages, whether it's individuals or streets or the network. They handle that. Insurance and pole rental, those are the fees that are monthly, quarterly, or annual for pole rental, as well as our insurance. Personnel is the staffing. Utilities, we have to pay for utilities at our POPs and at the CO, and then other administration fees related to charging our customers to be customers. Uh, I put some asterisks, many asterisks. I think everything has an asterisk here, um, which is one single is that generally fixed as an expense from 500 to 5,000 customers. And that's for wholesale service and utilities, as well as our personnel line budget. We're not expecting to increase those very much as we go from 500 customers today to 5,000 customers over the next couple of years. There might be some variation, but overall, we believe what we have for staffing, utilities, and wholesale service will be enough as we expand. The two asterisks should pick a different word. Increases but build out to more parcels. So as we build out, we are going to pay more for pole rental. That will grow. But that is independent of the number of customers we have. We just have to buy and pay for the pole rental. And finally, the increase based on customer base is on the admin fees and the customer service. Although customer service is by tier, so we're in the 500 to 1,000 customers now for customer service. As we go from 1,000 to 1,500 is another tier. So they don't grow linearly with the customer base. These become more important as we look at the expansion from 500 customers to 5,000 and what that does to revenue per customer per year. I think for some of you, this might be the first time seeing this kind of a look into the operating costs. So open up to any questions on what it costs to service the platform per month per customer.
Could you remind me,
Um,
with the customer service, I'm pretty sure that includes, when people put in calls asking, for help with things. Does that also cover like scheduling new customers and that kind of thing?
Yeah, so Netegrity runs customer support 24/7 for any incidences for us, as well as I think 18 or 19 other ISPs. They're based in Syracuse. They have a flat fee for that based on number of subscribers, and then it just goes up in those tiers. In addition, we've asked them to provide an extra service, which is to schedule all of our installations and then to follow up with phone calls or emails to get people scheduled. So we pay a flat fee per month for that service on top of the customer support service. In total for the whole year, it's just under $80,000.
Thanks.
Other operating cost questions from the last year?
Do you recall when we got our little bit cheaper on the wholesale service? When did we put that in place? Do you recall? I mean, is it
last spring?
it was last spring.
Yeah. And we're continually negotiating with them on how much we have, who the providers are. Cogent has been the most engaged and aggressive. They would like to be our single provider instead of having three providers. However, the recommendation from Integrity from Scott Brennan is that we don't use a single provider, even though their connections would be through two different ends of our network and out to two different ends of the two different directions from the internet. He still would not recommend having a single provider as an ISP. So we're engaged with them. If we need more or if we want to tweak, we probably would go with them first. But we're also talking to First Light and Cogent, and that'll be one of the tasks that Matt and I look at this year as we figure out growth and planning on wholesale service. It's possibly unlikely that the fees would go down, but what would be more likely is they would increase our service. In the last 2 weeks, it seems like it's becoming pretty much the norm at the customer level that like 1 gig service is the way to go. Like everyone gets 1 gig service.
Mm-hmm.
That's the lowest tier we offer is 1 gig. 1 gig. People aren't using 1 gig, but it's just an easy thing to talk about and brag about as a provider at the same price that they were paying for 500 meg or 400 meg, which is what we're charging as our lowest tier. We could go back to our wholesale service providers and probably get more out of them than 10 gig connections at the same rate in renegotiation versus trying to get a lower rate for that 10 gig.
And I'm curious, where's the bottleneck for the speed? Is it in the wholesale end or would it be at the pop end? Because of course, the fiber going to the house to the pop or whatever, that's a direct connection, I believe, pretty much.
So Scott would be able to answer that question or help to flush out that question a bit more. From what they have shared, they being an Integrity have shared, we have 3 connections. Each are 10 gig connections to the internet. They are measuring the load of usage across the entire network, the 500 plus customers. As of last fall, when we probably had around 450 customers, we had never had a moment in time where we exceeded a total of 3 gig of usage across the entire network.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's any bottleneck on backhaul provider right now.
So what I'm getting at, Dave, if we said, okay, if we wanted to restructure our service instead of 400 megabits, we're going to go to a gig to everybody, it could probably handle it because although you give them a gig, we probably they aren't using that gig. For instance, or would it end up that, oh, we'd have to go back to wholesale and get,
We would want to go to
bigger
wholesale
pipe.
first before we offered that to see,
Yeah.
but based on usage and based on internet technology and packet movement across the network, even with all the streaming, we are not hitting a bottleneck. We haven't even reached 10% of the capacity through that report last fall. Now, it just that's just the nature of the technology is actually ahead of the possible usage. We can imagine like full VR experiences that will take many more gigs of service at each individual home. Like we're pretty flat on the screen right now with all the 15 or 20 of us. If it was like full VR, we're all in 3D, and that has to be going back and forth live, so there's no graininess, no polygons, and it's like we're really there. That's going to take more bandwidth. But that's like Zoom X.0. Like that's far enough in the future that what we have right now is we're handling with what we have for backhaul providers for service. We'll continue to monitor it. We probably Amanda and I could probably put it into our the annual organizational meeting is to do an assessment at least once a year of usage. Now, Integrity has been sharing that from time to time, but there's not a set schedule where they say, here's the here's the max usage we've ever had in the network. It's just basically as it comes up in conversation, we talk about it, and it's been below 11%, below 10% at the peak.
Yeah, because that Spectrum gets a little more aggressive about how they're coming after our internet. They advertise a certain amount. What flexibility do we have before we start incurring a lot of cost if we wanted to do that for our customers, for instance? So that's what I'm getting at. So,
That's the question behind the question. And yes,
yeah.
I would not say this without either our engineer or our networking partner online, but we probably could increase to some degree what we're already offering without any impact on our wholesale service today. Probably. But again, I would want to work with our engineers and our networking partner to make that determination of if and when we did that increase.
Yeah, we don't want to overpromise it either. So,
Right.
and if your Spectrum off cable services, which they have bandwidth issue because they get so clogged up that it slows down. So they've improved that, but it's that happens. And with the fiber network we have, that is not the case. We are a lot better serviced that way.
Yeah, I was on a call yesterday with National Fiber Optic Broadband Association, and there's the bigger conversation is regarding selling people on the latency speeds versus just the gig service or the 2 gig service. Is that even if coax could send you more uh, more data faster, like the latency on coax is pretty poor for gaming, and there's not really an easy fix around that. All right. This is a pie chart of annual operating expenses in that total. It's not by percentage, but it is on the cost per that customer. Remember, the average customer is about $54 per year per month, which is about $648. So where that money that comes in goes out to currently as of today. All right. In the 2026 budget, we start with a slide on revenue. I haven't asked Amanda if she want to go over this. Do you want to cover this?
Sure. So the revenue, well, both for 2026, I've split it into what's coming in that's considered MIP and non-MIP, just to be clear, especially as we get into the expenditures, how that's going to work. So pretty much, we have bank interest, that's an estimate on our interest that sits in our savings in between when money's in and out. Refunds tend to be in other, it's kind of like a catch-all, but we do get a rebate back from one of our vendors, that Graybar, that we buy equipment from. So that goes in there. I never know how much that's going to be, so I have to just make an estimate. The grant funds is obviously the MIP. This is kind of making a guess of how much we're going to get back this year, and the timing and so on. So we kind of said, well, we know there's going to be 4 reimbursements. Let's be positive and say we're going to get 3 of them back in 2026. Now, some of it could be 2027, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. So that is basically Dryden's portion of the grant and 1/4 of it. So 2,793,000. Town of Caroline funding, this is for the IMA for the work that the town of Dryden is doing to help manage and eventually operate Caroline's portion. So the town pays that back in. And then operational revenue, this is it's on a separate spreadsheet, but this is projecting out what we think operational revenue will bring in 2026. So we have it right now that because of Calix getting installed and so on, and new construction, we have the first 6 months at only 25 new customers a month. That's probably a little bit on the conservative side, but that's better. But then July, we said 100 customers a month are getting signed up, new customers coming on. And so when you do all that calculations out, comes to 461,950 for operational.
And Amanda, how many new customers entirety for 26 are we projecting?
So
have that?
let me just go find that number.
Maybe 600
No,
plus.
not that one, this one. So we're saying we started in January at 515 customers, and we are projecting to be at the end of December at 1,250. So about 700, about 700 customers, 725 customers or so, is our projections for 2026.
Almost double, so that'd be great.
Yeah.
We don't hear you, Dave.
Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, so 735 new customers this year on top of the 515 we started with, which would basically do more in 12 months than we did in the last 4 years. And we've already have all those signed up. Between the 650 signed up who are not in the green zone yet, who live in Dryden, and another 75 who are in apartments that we're trying to work through with MDUs, we basically already have the customer account we're planning on bringing on board. So it's not like we have to do any marketing to reach this operational revenue. We just have to build it, and then we'll hit that. Anyone else who happens to join because their friends and neighbors talked about how great it is, or they saw a sign, will only increase this operational revenue beyond what we already have signed up. The one gap in that is they have to start getting activated at 100 per month starting July 1st, which means you have to have enough built to get those people who have already signed up installed. We can't install them all in December, hit this revenue number, because it compounds. It's the monthly revenue over and over and over. The sooner in the year they sign up, the more revenue we get from them in the year. And Amanda has built the spreadsheet to include the new customers per month. So that way, new customer A is worth more in January than they are in December. All right, I'll mute myself again, Amanda.
Any other questions about revenue? If not, Dave, you can go ahead to the next slide. All right, so there's a lot more on here. So one of the changes I've made going forward in 2026, both for ourselves, but also because the comptroller wants us to, is I'm starting to put construction and operations all in the same report. And it's something that we're going to be working forward to. We started doing in 25 for the monthly reports. We're going to be doing more of it. We're updating those reports for the monthly reports. So you're going to see here, like we have the construction, again, trying to keep basic categories, the same ones that we've had from the beginning and going forward. So, but this is our budget. So this is taking into account, you can see central office and POPs. We know we have quotes for the new Calix equipment and the new DC power equipment. So we have those. Fiber and equipment line, we know how much is going to be MIP and how much is non-MIP for all the equipment we have to buy. And those came right off of the gray bar quotes that were approved. Subcontractors, same thing. We already have the bids accepted and ready, and what is MIP and what's not MIP. So those are all like pretty close. It's just a matter of how much gets done in 26. Now, obviously, MIP has to be fully done in 26, and purchased. 20 a non-MIP, if something happens, they can move to 27, but we're going to be positive and say that it's going to get done. Installations, that's a kind of an average. Again, looking at 710 installs, which is the number we were talking about, we know that 88 of those are MIP eligible, meaning the share of what MIP is wanting to pay for installations, and how much is for Dryden, how much is for Caroline. So that's where those numbers come from. Professional fees, I had to make here's the average over 2026. This is what we think is going to happen in 2020, or here's the average of what happened in 2025. This is what we think is going to happen in 26. This is the number that Dave and I are like, this one could change. We are just not sure. Things could go down. And we know there's still going to be heavy engineering costs in 2026. But now that they've done a lot of the work, is it going to be a little bit less? We are not sure. Legal, like we've done a lot of legal work in 25 to getting agreements updated and things kind of cleaned up. Will it be less than 26? Possibly. So those are the big numbers in professional fees, the big ticket numbers. Pull permits, this is actually, we have the billable, basically we expect 2026 to be mainly our share of the make ready work to be done. And we have almost all of those bids except for a few. There's some of the newer ones we don't have those. So I had again made an average and said this is how much is MIP and this is how much is non-MIP, broke those out. We do have a contingency line in there, just said 5% on total contractor cost for the ups and the downs that happen. Incidental is kind of the catch-all, the small items that we have to, garbage, and I'm trying to think of something else that falls in that category. Again, incidental small items. IP addresses, like Dave said, the town board approved purchasing additional IP addresses, so that's in the budget. The interest on our ban, I already know that number because it already happened. Personnel expense, this is for the whole project. This is all our staff. Also included in here is the new account manager that we hope to bring on in the next month or so. So these numbers are known and it's assumptions on full-time for all 3 staff. And then operational expenses, again, this is all, you saw the detail of that. This is just lumped down into one number to make it simple for this report. And then when Caroline starts customers, we have calculated out a percentage based on number of customers, how much is Caroline's share of those, of the fixed expenses, the wholesale, the customer support, some item, insurance, and so on. So we've apportioned out what we know is going to be a shared expense, and that is so that's showing a decrease because obviously we're paying it out, but then Caroline's revenue is going to help pay that for that portion. So again, split between MIP and non-MIP. It's going to be another heavy construction, but build out year. But necessary to get to those 7 additional customers and then eventually more as we go forward.
Wow, awesome. Thanks about that. Any questions on the expenses
A lot of
for
detail.
2026?
Well, it's almost what we spent in 5 years.
That is true.
But we should be almost done when it is done. So
We'll have more than twice as many customers, and this accounts for reaching 100% of the town, which talks to the expense of getting us up and running and the backbone that we built, as well as all the planning, that we're only about 30% of the town covered today. We're going to get the other 70% this year, as well as all the installs, as well as everything else that has to happen with everything. So it's hard to like look at the numbers because I was like 14 and 12 and it's like it's pretty close. But it's in the actual work that's being done, it's not exactly the same type of work. And some of the stuff is like long, just investments.
Now, did you project that we're going to pick up a lot of our MDUs our multifamily dwelling units, in core of which has to have engineering, or are we thinking that those are probably going to be more in the 27?
I did include some of those in 26. And again, we kind of did an estimate on a prior quote we had gotten for work to be done in, I believe, one of the trailer parks. And we said, okay, if we did 5 of them in 26 and the remaining 10 or 15, I can't remember the exact number, in 27. So I split them. I didn't, because some of them, if they're non-MIP, they're probably not going to be prioritized, but there's still going to be some planning work. And again, it's customers that if we can get in that one spot, that's 10 new customers or whatever it might be, depending on the location. So we're going to be gauging that as we go. But yes, there is some included in, I think it's the subcontractor line. Yes, it's in the subcontractor line
Yeah.
number.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those investments we plan on spending X dollars amount, which is hard to do on average for these, for 5 of them. It might be a little less, might be a little bit more. We might do more than 5 of them. We'd love to do them all. So we are taking into account some of the work to get to those and the customer base that will follow by providing access. All right. We have a chart of the operating expenses for 2026. So if you think back 15 minutes ago, and we talked about the operating expenses of 2025, we're now calculating at 1,225 customers. Wholesale service flat from a year ago. Customer service generally flat from a year ago because we haven't increased to like 1,500 users or 2,000 users. Insurance and pole rental will go up because we're going to have more poles that we then associate with the operating expenses. These are ongoing, forever expenses. Personnel costs, utilities, and admin fees based on charging 1,225 customers and other parts of admin. Now the total expense per customer, when we divide it by the customer base, is 275. The revenue per customer is 648, leaving us an excess per customer per year of now 372. Remember 3 slides ago, it was negative $3 per customer per year after we paid for everything. Now we're at an excess funds on the operating costs of 372 per customer per year.
And
Let's
just
put together. Go ahead, Amanda.
sorry, just to be kind of so it's clear, like obviously our 1225 is for the December ending. So obviously if we're not at 12, that in between, and then the next slide will show this, like that's the end of the year. But there's some time before that's not at this 372 extra. It's just what we expect by the end of the year, I guess is what we should say.
Yeah, I
Sorry,
think.
can I just ask
Go
one
ahead,
quick?
Go ahead, Graham.
I vaguely recall that the utility, I don't know why I thought this, but I thought the utilities for the last year, 2025, was 9,300 somewhere. Sorry, I don't have that slide in front of me, but it just, so I'm wondering, are utilities going down?
So I should
Or
say
did
that
I just miss it?
It was,
no.
it was
Yeah,
95.
it was 95. Yeah,
Okay,
okay.
so it's
Sorry.
possible that when I did the budget, like I basically had to say, okay, well, what was our average cost for utilities through the year? And it's really electricity and some natural gas for the generators. So I probably just estimated too low on that one. I should have upped it. But when I did this, when I was working out a monthly budget, really, I was kind of said, oh, it's about $800 a month. Well, sometimes it was 6, sometimes it was 9, that type of situation.
It's a good call out. We can
Yeah,
reassess that.
yeah, we can adjust that.
Or put up with the projected one, just put up the actual expenses we had on 2025 would be really nice. So
Yeah.
yeah. I don't know why I remembered that. That's amazing. What?
The cost of electricity is in the news. Fortunately for us, it's a small part of the total budget, but it is a part of the budget.
Yeah.
Why
So,
is the personnel line so different than last year?
Is it-
Amanda, more people having
Yeah.
having a
This is
FTE.
showing all the personnel. It's not just doing the prior one for last year. I split between the two capital and operating. Again, because we're changing how we report it, we're putting everything in one. So we've put the personnel fully in here. Um,
Okay, that makes sense.
again, because we'd have to have the staff.
And we also have a new full-time position coming on.
That's right.
Yeah.
I guess one way you could look at the operating expenses is that big blue box called average excess funds per customer is the margin or profit if there was no other expenses. We're doing, I don't have that as a percentage on this chart, but it's like, I don't know, 38% margin.
Well, and at least for the next several years, that profit is paying down the bonds.
Well, before that, yeah,
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
The 372, first, we have to remind ourselves often, because we often forget, each installation on
Right.
average
As
costs
to pay back the
over
installations, right?
over
Yep.
$1,000.
Yep.
So now that we have this number of customers, we know that the installation that we give to people for free takes a couple years to pay off. Now, if we had twice as many customers who are at 2,400, the average excess funds per customer is going to go up again, which means the time to pay off the installations will go down.
Will go down. Yep.
But right now, it's almost 3 years of time to pay off the average installation.
Right.
So it's better if they stay more than a weekend,
It is.
which most people have done. The second is, as Tony said, this money has to go to pay for the long-term expense of the construction of the project, that $14+ million that we've already spent, as well as going forward this year's expenditures. So sometime in the far future, there will be some money, but it is far future, especially with the conversion of the bonds from potentially 10 years to 30 years. It gives us more time to pay that out, and that this money will go to be paying for that.
The point is that excess is not true profit. It's not like the town is making money off of this yet. And that's the, I would, people seeing that 372.25 per customer excess might think, well, you can lower the price now, but there's a lot more to
Yes.
it. Yeah.
I mean,
So,
the installation fee is a huge part of it, and the
Right.
long-term cost of paying for the complete, multiple tens
Right.
of millions of dollars of infrastructure cost to
Right.
build the project. The more important thing for us and for bond counsel, and ultimately probably for the Assembly and the Senate, is to show that we can make this service pay for itself in terms of construction costs,
Right.
with
Support
the
itself.
monthly
Yep.
operating expense, with the monthly subscriber revenue.
Right.
Like, this is not a project that needs to rely on outside funds to pay for the monthly expense and ultimately to pay for the entire cost of the project. The subscribers themselves will pay, and we can show in the 2026 budget that funds from subscribers will go to pay for installs and overall construction.
Right.
That will continue to grow. Okay, I think I cut someone off with a question.
well, I just think with Tony's thing, maybe we should add an asterisk to that whole number just to clarify so somebody doesn't take the number the wrong way. So,
Well, if you've been listening to the entire, so someone who's following this on YouTube later, if you've seen everything up until now, you'll know that we've spent quite a bit of money and plan to This blue box pays for those expenses,
Right.
which we can continue to reiterate as we talk about the budget and where things go. Amanda.
So this is like, I think I needed to do this for myself. I took that projected revenue and expenses, and said, okay, I was like, oh, look at that. We're gonna have this 372. And I was like, that's not right. There's still something not right. And I said, wait a minute. And I did this chart and said, there's the thing where we've been talking about. Up through about July, August, we're still not making our revenue is not meeting expenses. Again, you can see there the change in the growth of the revenue that we're projecting. Obviously, if that comes on sooner, it's going to be better. I mean, it's going to help, but we just had to get there. So I know every month I show you something that says, hey, here's our revenue and here's our expenses. And the expenses do this up and down due to semi-annual or annual expenses. But this is, I think, just for your own like eyeballs to see what could change if revenue comes on faster, customers come on faster, then obviously this is going to change. If something slows it down, then it's going to go the other
It'll go the
direction.
other way, right?
Yeah. So
This is a great graph. Yeah.
yeah, this helped me because I was
Yeah.
like, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense. And then I did this and I said, there's the number this is
Yep.
what I was looking for. So
Yep.
you got to think even that 372, yes, is paying for either installations or installs, but it's also like, well, that's covering all the months we weren't in the black. So
Right.
I think at the end of the year, it's almost a break even. Is that right? On the actual?
well, at the end of 2025, it was close to the break even. That's that negative
No,
$3.25.
the gap here that we're paying for things we don't have money for from monthly, and here to pay for
Oh,
where we have
yes.
more, when we actually take the space between those lines, it's
Yes.
almost a complete wash.
Well, I think that's what I was doing, like total revenue and then total expenditures for 2026 projections. And I was like, why is it about the same, but we're showing excess at the end of in that other one? And this is what helped
Right.
me
Right.
put it together. So
All right, so then we spend some time looking at 2027 and 2028 as we finish construction and move into like fully just operating. Do you want to talk about the top half revenue and bottom half expenses?
you're asking me, right, Dave?
Yeah, unless anyone else
Okay.
wants to jump in.
Okay. Yeah, no, please jump in.
We've already
Um,
defined everything, so hopefully you can play along with what these are.
So again, I have 27 split between MIP and non-MIP, mainly because we'll still be getting reimbursements in 27, but obviously we won't have any expenses in 27. That's the big key, obviously, you can see here. Again, kind of just making some estimates. Obviously, our refunds I dropped because we're buying less stuff from Gray Bar, so we shouldn't be getting the rebates. And you can see here where our operational revenue kind of does a big jump. That's because we're projecting for 27 and 28 that customers will come on. We're projecting 100 new customers every month. So obviously that triggers a much higher revenue. So right now, by the end of 2028, we're projecting 3,625 customers. So obviously that can change. And then when you get into expenses for 2027, you'll see subcontractors for construction still has a number in it. That's MDUs, but also I kind of made an estimate that there would be still some construction for non-MIP areas that could still be going on or paid for in 2027. So we've put that there. Obviously, installation materials, again, using our about $1,000 for each customer. Well, if we're putting on 100 customers a month for 12 months, that's $1,200, $1,200,000. Professional fees. This is where Dave and I said, whoa, what are we gonna do with this? We don't know how much engineering are we gonna need. Are we gonna need a lot more legal? We actually adjusted this number some because we think we'll have less engineering. We talked about, well, maybe we need to hire an in-house engineer or something. Like we're just not sure where that's going to go. So that number you can see changes a lot between 27 and 28, but we expect there still will be some. There will still be interest, personnel, operational expenses. I did those, most of them at kind of a flat 5%. Obviously some change, but some don't. So, but we had to show something. So you can see here how we go from our inflows are our outflows are now gaining against our what's coming. I said that backwards. Our inflows are starting to cover more of our outflows expenses. So
I've got a quick question, Amanda. Is there anything on here that shows like emergency restoration or anything like that? Would that be?
yeah, right now it does not. That's one of the things when I started, which is not on here. We did some long-term projections, like what's going to happen. We do need to start thinking about repairs and maintenance and items like that. But again, it's hard to make I'm not sure even how much to estimate for that yet. And how much are we going to need for, is there a new house built? Is there a new development or apartment building? Like all of those pieces are still, we're working through some of those details. So these are very much estimated, and we're going to massage these more obviously by summer, early fall for 27's budget, as we know what happens.
We have a pretty wide range of amount to set aside for reserves from talking to other ISPs. Again, that blue box of like leftover money from operations that's paid for installations, long-term investment in the bands, the bonds. The third category, as Sean just brought up, is maintenance and repairs and replacements. These things will happen, as well as expansion. It would be ideal not to have to ban or bond more money to do that and to use any additional reserves to store. Now, for Caroline, that doesn't have the amount of bond debt that we're going to have, we have put in our agreement that they would store up to 25% of the infrastructure cost in their reserves. Now, their infrastructure cost is about 8 million. So over time, as they have excess funds at the end of all installations, to then make a reserve fund up to $2 million. It's a quarter of the original construction cost for future repairs, maintenance, and expansion. We don't have that number calculated for Dryden yet, and we're still determining that.
I have a question about installation costs, like thinking ahead into the future. If a house had service and then they stopped having service and someone else later wanted to get service to that house again, does that cost the full $2,000 like to reinstall service, or once
No.
it's at an address that cost is covered basically forever?
Basically forever. I mean, there's a few variables. Most people, although I don't have an exact number, Amanda might. Most people who terminate service because they move away or move to another part of town that doesn't have service yet will return their ONU and their Wi-Fi devices. So then we reclaim that money we spent. We can cycle those back out and use them again. The drop cables and the labor to get from the street to the house, they remain attached to the house, even if they deactivate their service. So we don't have to pay for that again. Generally, a reinstall will be returning to the house with equipment and then plugging it in and testing it with integrity.
Yeah. So it'll be lower. You still have an installation expense because you have to roll a truck, right? And
Right.
and all that. But the like in my neighborhood, it's all buried drop cables from the road to the house. Those are in place, so we don't have to do that again.
And
So it would be definitely a reinstall would definitely be cheaper, but there's still going to be an expense to it.
But
Yeah.
we could potentially have people try to pick up their devices and plug and tell them how, give them instructions how to plug it in, and if that works, we go with it. If and then roll a truck if we have problems. I mean, I think that's. I mean,
Could, Spectrum likes to send 91-year-olds self-install kits.
yeah.
This is also going for new customers. So at 100
Yeah.
new customers a month, we're making an assumption that these are all new installs.
In 2026, the vast majority of these are going to be new installs.
Yes.
You may
But
get a few of those that are reinstalls, but in
Right.
2026, the vast majority are going to be new installs.
But
Yeah.
even 27,
Right.
Dave, you're going to know the number, like how many households or how many
Mhm.
homes are eligible, but we're not even close to the 5,000 you were estimating.
Right.
So there's still a lot. I mean, this through 28 only gets us up to 3,600 some customers. So we're going to have a mix. You're always going to have people that move. I played the conservative route and said, please bring your equipment back, because if the new person moving into that home does not hook up with Dryden Fiber because they have some other service they want to use, well, then we've just lost
Right.
those
That
assets.
hardware.
So I'd rather have them come back. We have them. And if it's as simple, like Clarity just has to go out and plug it in, test it, we're good. That's less than, I think, the cost of losing those assets. So I should say, yes, the 1,200, the 1,200,000 might seem high, but it's also we're going on new installs.
These
No,
It
26,
just
27, it's going to be mostly new installs. Yeah.
Yeah, the thing that's
It-
cool about the budget when we look at 29, 2030, 2031, that we do eventually run out of houses in Dryden. This brings us through the end of 2028 with 3,600 houses out of 7,200 total parcels, addresses, MDUs all combined. So about 50% take rate. Maybe we go to a 60% or 70%, but eventually the installs per month are like 5 new
Yeah.
installs per month, which is 60 grand a year, not 1.2 million a year.
Right.
That also changes the the entire budget, because the installation cost is such a big upfront expense for us.
right. That was one aspect that I was thinking about. And the other thing I was thinking about is just what the cost of churn of having people moving in and out is. That doesn't change the total number of subscribers, but it does introduce a cost. But again,
Yeah.
it sounds like that cost is modest. So anyway, yeah, I was certainly not disputing the numbers in this table.
No, I didn't think you were. It's good to ask these questions, because if you think of the budget as always having 1.2 million every year for installs, that's a lot of subscribers to pay for that many. But
Mhm.
knowing that that number does eventually stop, like year 10 of this, that basically is gone completely.
Well, there'll always be installs,
But
but
but it is a
yeah,
fraction of the 1.2 million
correct. It'll be a
across the
fraction of
board.
that. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Just another point about the returned equipment. I know the equipment I have, I don't think is labeled property of Dryden Fiber, either the Plume device nor the ONU. So I'm just wondering, just raised the question, are we labeling them that way as property of Dryden Fiber to be returned?
Yes.
Spectrum doesn't label their equipment property of Spectrum, and they want them to return it. But
Everything as of last July or so has been labeled that goes out. So
So the new
Cassie
stuff is, yeah, you already take
Cassie
care of
worked on
that.
a labeling project where we acquired thousands of labels to go on every piece of equipment, both the ONU and the Wi-Fi devices. We
As
then
usual,
gave
she's
those,
ahead of us.
we gave those to Clarity to put on the devices as they go out. And when people call to terminate their service, they talk to either Integrity or to our billing department or both. And there's also a reminder there, either by email or by phone, to return your equipment.
where are they supposed to return it to?
Today they return it to town hall.
Town hall. Not that I'm thinking about canceling my service or anything.
I mean, people move.
Yep, people
If they
move.
if they move, then and if we can reacquire the equipment, we should.
Yeah.
Sometimes people move and their new people who move in become subscribers and they can leave the equipment. That has happened a few times. It's a little bit of extra juggling, but makes the install instantaneous. So there's that possibility too. Um, Probably the biggest one that Amanda and I talked about and reduced here is the professional fees. As a business with this kind of revenue and expenses, to be spending $1 million in 27 and 400,000 in 2028 for legal and engineering fees, to me tells me that we're doing something wrong or that we should hire a full-time person for either or both of those positions. It's just too much for this size organization. Upfront to construction, there's a lot of stuff that we dealt with, as Amanda said, in 2025 in the legal side of the project, where we've converted a lot of handshake agreements into signed documents. That costs some money. That should not continue beyond construction. All right, so coming up to the end of the time we have together, recap 2021 through 2025 major investment in the project. As you saw, our 2025 operations overview shows the ability to break even. 2026 budget is a focus on revenue and expenses with major continued investment, but also a growth of over 700 new customers. Projected break even for operating. Each customer becomes profitable for operations, excess funds cover installs and the construction financing. And then we reviewed what it looks like going forward, which typically in a town budget, you wouldn't look at projections for 2027, 2028. But given that we're an organization that's investing in the future, we thought it would make sense to look at those projections going out. Construction expenses reduce greatly in those years, and our focus becomes installs and maintenance as well as operations.
And looking further out, we need to account if we're going to replace our links that, we're running on points network or whatever, some of those agreements, when they run out, is when we would have to plan to either run the cable ourselves or read the negotiating agreement. So, I mean, it's more in the 10-year sort of projection. So I think, I don't forget how long they were, but yeah.
We have already started planning that, especially
Okay.
the point broadband sector, and possibly sooner than later on the Empire Access overlash. It just makes sense for us to own the equipment material and not be leasing those parts of the network. But good reminder, we do lease parts of our network from other partners, or we have reciprocal agreements that allow us to overlash. We're going to do our best to have the 2027 budget to you sometime in the fall, the same timeline as the town budget. So September, October, November, and have a plan for 2027 much earlier. This was the earliest we could do it, given the focus on the GDA and the grant and the reimbursements. So going forward, we'll move this session to sometime in the fall for this year, next year, and the year after as we bring that into alignment with the town budget. Anything else for today? I know we're just a few minutes over.
No, this was really good.
This was very helpful to understand.
Great. I'll send you a copy of this deck for the Broadband Committee members. This is a draft budget for 2026. This is what we're going to be using. So you'll have it as a reference, but it's still, this is how we're thinking about the budget as opposed to having it be something that we are ready to put forward to be voted on and approved. We'll discuss the process of that with the town board in the coming weeks and months. All right. Thanks for your time today. Really appreciate it. We will see you in 2 weeks for the first meeting in March on March 6th. We'll be looking at all the business that happened in the month of February, including construction.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Sean.